Last Sam's Cage by David A. Poulsen. Chapter 15, page 158. Something was different. Eddie felt it even before he opened his eyes. Something was very different. Something was wrong. One of the few disadvantages of the condo was that the tight quarters made getting dressed inside a challenge, and getting dressed quickly was pretty much out of the question. Even though Eddie wore a t-shirt and socks to bed, there was still the job of getting into his pants. A real shirt could wait until he was outside, but Eddie preferred to hit the open air with his pants on. Most mornings, this was no big deal. He had all the time in the world to snake his way into his pants, but today was different. Today he wanted to hurry. What the hell was that? He didn't think was imagining it. No, there was something about this morning that was different from all the others. Finally, he was into his pants and ready to move outside. That's when he realized that what was wrong. It was the ducks. They weren't making their usual little duck noises, and his duck, the one that was always looking at him when he woke up, she wasn't there. The cops? That seemed impossible. He was sure he hadn't been followed. Had they been tipped off? And if so, by whom? Jack Sim? Eddie doubted that. Zoo security maybe, but that they'd spotted him. Or maybe Jack had told them about him. Eddie ruled out the last possibility. Jack wouldn't turn him in, even if he was pissed off. That wasn't the way Jack Sim would handle things. Eddie tried to look out. Another of the condo's disadvantages quickly became evident. Except for a small narrow strip above the opening that he used to get in and out of the place, visibility was pretty well nil. The only way he was going to find out what was going on outside was to go out there. He pulled the Swiss Army knife out of the ground and started out. He hurried. Once out, he looked quickly at the pond. The ducks were out of the water, most of the far bank not looking at all that stressed and yet obviously not wanting to be any closer. Eddie looked right, then left. No one. Did I mention they let me in for free? The voice came from behind him. Eddie looked behind him. This isn't Vietnam. You don't always have to sneak up on people. Jack Sim smiled. When I was a kid, we all got in for nothing. That's why we came here to play. We had the world's greatest playground, a 10-minute bike ride from home, and it was free. What's the matter with you, man? Eddie interrupted, staring hard at Jack's face. You come up behind people like that, you gotta be nuts. There was a lot more green space then, and a hell of a big playground. We loved it. That's where he stopped for a minute and looked away. Now they have buildings representing every part of the world and just about every kind of animal. I guess that's the way it's supposed to be in a zoo, but I liked it better when there was lots of open space. People would come and just walk and lie on blankets and have picnics. You didn't have to look at animals the whole time. It was nice. Eddie started to wonder if Jack had lost it. The man was having a conversation with himself. Eddie wasn't sure what he was supposed to say, or if he was supposed to say anything at all. Jack looked at him. It was you who broke into that house, wasn't it? Eddie started to pull on his shirt. What? The Pargeters. I've met them a couple of times around the neighborhood. I've heard some people talking about it last night in the grocery store. They said somebody broke in and stole a bunch of stuff. I figure it was you. Look, first you come sneaking around here, and the next thing you're accusing me of stuff. I don't know what. I bought you coffee. Jack pulled up a cup from the paper bag he was holding. He held it out to Eddie, then took another cup out of the bag for himself. Eddie took the coffee. Jack had fixed it the way he liked it. It wasn't hot anymore, but it wasn't cold either. It was nice to have coffee first thing in the morning. Eddie could feel Jack watching him. "You do drugs, kid?" Eddie was surprised at the question. It had come with no warning, like a lot of things Jack Sims said. The man wasn't one to ease into a conversation. There was no doubt about that. No, Eddie took a sip of the coffee. It wasn't a total lie. He'd only smoked a few times at parties, and he sure didn't have extra money to buy anything right now. Actually, he'd been so busy just trying to survive that he hadn't given any thought at all to drugs. There were times he wouldn't have minded having a pack of cigarettes, but now that he had some money, he could take care of that. "There's no sense you and me bullshitting each other." Jack was stirring his coffee with a pen. "You get as old as I am, you figure out that BS is just about the biggest problem there is in this world. I'm just hoping you didn't steal that stuff so you could buy drugs." "You seem to have a lot of things figured out." Eddie looked at Jack over the rim of his coffee cup. "That's the second time you said that." Jack shook his head slowly. "I don't, but I tell you what I do know, kid." "Yeah, that's just what I need. Parental advice." "Nothing parental about what I'm telling you. And that is that you're going to have a pretty crappy life if you keep going like you are." Eddie looked away. He didn't feel like a lecture, especially from someone who hung out at the zoo every day because he couldn't get his own life together. "Right now, the people who run the world don't like to deal with people with problems," Jack said slowly. "They don't like it that there are poor people and sick people and old people. What they like is having a system where things go real nice for the people with money, so those folks can keep making more money without a bunch of hassle. And somebody like you, you're a hassle. Now those same people, the ones that are running everything, they don't give two damns about how tough your life has been. Lots of people have tough lives, and they don't all end up being screw-ups. You better get your head around that little news flash real soon." Jack sipped his coffee. Eddie noticed that the pen was still sticking out of the cup. He hated to admit it, but he found himself listening to what Jack was saying. He thought back to the television interview he'd seen with Stink Pigler's old man. Eddie figured Pigler and the other government guy fit in pretty well with Jack's theory. Even so, he hoped the speech wouldn't go on much longer. He wanted to enjoy his coffee without being called a screw-up by the most screwed-up person he'd ever met. "I'm not planning to buy any drugs." "Well, that's good," Jack nodded. "Doesn't matter much, though. Do you know there are places in the world where they cut off your hands for stealing a loaf of bread to feed your family? We don't need that, so I guess that makes us civilized. But we think the same way about one thing. Stealing is stealing. Doesn't matter what your reason is. It's all about that system. The system is everything, and you're a drain on the system. Same as that sick person or that old person. So something has to be done about you and all the other drains. And the easiest and cheapest thing to do is to concentrate on catching pups like you and kicking your butts around the block a few times." "Who says I'm going to get caught?" Jack took the pen out of his cup and threw the rest of the coffee away. He put the cup back in the paper bag. "I thought I was talking to somebody with a little intelligence. You saying something like that tells me I was wrong." "Yeah, well, if all that stuff you said was right, then what's wrong with taking a few things back from the people with all the money?" Jack shook his head. "First of all, the targeters aren't the people I'm talking about. They're just a young family busting their backsides to make an okay living. They're not the problem, and they're not the ones the government is falling all over itself to look after. But even if they were, stealing their stuff just makes you as bad as the worst of them. Well, I'm not giving any of the stuff back, if that's what you came here for. Jack stood up. That's not what I came here for. Jack stepped across the stream and over the wire fence on the other side. It was hard for him to lift his leg up that high, and it took him a while to get solidly on the other side. He looked back at Eddie. I like you, kid. I don't know why, but I do. And I don't want to read about you in the newspaper. Eddie watched as Jack walked off in the direction of the dinny. The old man passed under the belly of the huge dinosaur and disappeared from view. Thanks a lot, Eddie said out loud, though he knew Jack was out of earshot. The old man had ruined his morning. Eddie didn't feel like thinking about all the stuff Jack had said. Not right now. Maybe not ever. Nobody's out there worrying about me. He sent the words in the direction Jack had gone. I'm the only one who's taking care of me, and that's just what I plan to keep on doing, old man. He said the last two words slowly and bitterly as he drained the last of the coffee. It was cold now, and Eddie didn't like the taste of it left in his mouth.